Thank you very much. So now you understood that I'm not from the computer science field. And today I'm very pleased, and thank you for having me. I'm very pleased to speak to you about the European approach to microcredentials. As you know, in the European Union, the process about the development of this tool you heard about this morning from our project coordinator, and you probably already know about what it was very fast, as I said, after the pandemic, for upskilling and reskilling of the labor force. This was the main message we heard about it. But there is a lot behind this process. And why am I here to speak about it? As CIMEA, my institution, is the National Information Center for procedure concerning the recognition of qualifications. And we are in a network composed by countries, UNESCO and Council of Europe, in order to facilitate recognition of qualification. And this is another key word you will hear again in the next slides. So our main activity is credential evaluation, but around this, we have a lot of further activities. And one of the main one is innovation and digitalization. This is something else that you will hear again in the next slides. Of course, as you could understand from the very beginning, it's not me about digitalization. And the relevant key topic activities of CIMEA in this framework are also international projects and policy developments. And why microcredentials? We were involved in the main national, international tables about microcredentials. So first of all, we award a microcredentials in collaboration with an Italian university, but we were also partner in the MICROBALL project. It was the main activity developing the field at European level. When I speak about Europe, at regional level instead of the European Union as a main field. So we are the Italian representative in the European Union group of experts on microcredentials for the development of the European approach. We digitalized our services for credential evaluation by a blockchain platform, and we are involved in several international pro-EU projects based on microcredentials and digitalization and blockchain and so on. But going to where we are and what we are going to speak about today, we are in the framework of the MICROCASA project, and we need to speak about microcredentials, of course. But when we speak about microcredentials, we are in a mare magnum, the Latins say mare magnum, the great sea. So we are where? When we speak about microcredentials, we have national approach. If we think about you as the addressee of our activities, so we have national approach, one national approach from Indonesia, another one from Malaysia, another one from the Philippines. But we also, if we look at on the other side and what we can bring to you as our experience in the field, we have regional approaches in Europe, as a region, in the European Union, and in the European higher education area. But we also have regional approaches in Asia, and we have the Southeast Asia as your representative geographic view, but we also have a lot of collaboration in the Asia Pacific region. So, but we didn't finish it. We also have a global approach by UNESCO, and several documents were recently developed. So I am in the computer science faculty. My speech is after Carlos' speech. So I said, I need a support. And so I asked to this Professor Eric, researcher to help me in this mare magnum and to give me some tools to help me to give this overview. So let me see if it works. Yes, it does. So, Professor Eric, good morning. Nice to see you here.
Hello, my friend.
The audio is very low. Could you please give me the definition of micro-credentials as developed in the recent European policy?
Micro-credentials refer to short, focused learning programs that allow individuals to gain specific skills or knowledge in a particular area. These credentials are typically awarded upon completion of a specific course or training module and are designed to provide individuals with tangible evidence of their learning achievements. In the context of the recent European policy, micro-credentials are being recognized as a valuable tool for promoting lifelong learning, enhancing employability, and supporting the acquisition of new skills in a rapidly changing job market. The policy aims to establish a framework for the development and recognition of micro-credentials across Europe, ensuring their quality, relevance, and portability.
Thank you very much, Professor Eric. It was very clear. Could you please also provide me an example to understand what micro-credentials are?
Certainly. Here's an example to help illustrate micro-credentials. Let's say you work in the field of digital marketing and want to enhance your skills in social media marketing. You come across a micro-credential program offered by a reputable online learning platform. This program consists of a series of short, targeted courses that cover various aspects of social media marketing, such as content creation, audience targeting, and analytics. Upon completion of each course, you receive a micro-credential, such as a digital badge or certificate, that validates your achievement and demonstrates your proficiency in that specific area of social media marketing. These micro-credentials can be displayed on your resume, linked profile, or other professional platforms to showcase your expertise to potential employers or clients. By earning multiple micro-credentials in different areas of digital marketing, you can build a comprehensive portfolio of skills and knowledge that can set you apart in the job market and open up new career opportunities.
Thank you very much, Eric. See you soon.
You're welcome. I'm glad I could help. If you have any more questions or need further assistance, feel free to ask.
Is everything clear now?
Hello, my friend.
No, stop, please, Eric. It's enough for today. Okay, so going back to the micro-credentials. This morning you heard about the potentials for the higher education institutions and the advantages about the micro-credentials and as a complementary activities in the micro programs. But when we speak about micro-credentials, the learner is at the center of this activity, of this kind of programs. So why it's so useful for them? And I would like to give you an overview of the different interests behind the micro-credentials in order to make you clear why the policies developed and what are the main pillars we have to take into account when we speak about micro-credentials. And please, I kindly recommend you to think about this brainstorming, as during the afternoon session, we will collect your feedbacks and your inputs during the discussion in the working groups. You will be divided in 3 different groups. We will speak about it later. But for us today, it's really important to have you on board in this process as stakeholders in the development of micro-credentials in your countries. So please just think what could be your input in this process. So why micro-credentials for learners, first of all? Of course, they receive a targeted learning. It can be for job opportunities, but also for personal interests, something that can be learned in a very targeted way. If we think about a computer science faculty, for example, you have a bachelor in computer science, but you want to learn about JavaScript. So you take a micro-credentials in coding strictly related with the use of a new program you didn't study in your previous studies. And this could be a clear example that you can take a targeted, useful learning. It can be useful for the improvements in your job activities. It could be useful to find a new job or find a job if you are not employed, and so on, but also for your personal interests. So the recognition of achievement is something really important. As you heard before, Professor Eric said you can post your micro-credentials on LinkedIn, on your portfolio, as of course, micro-credentials are strictly connected with the certification of the learning outcomes acquired during the course. Lifelong learning, the example I gave it before, could be for a young computer science degree holder, but also for somebody who's, I don't know, unemployed since a lot of years and wants to restart working and to be updated with the new technologies. So lifelong learning, in the sense that it can be applied to all the all the interested parties. Of course, you can receive and learn in a very efficient cost and time way. Why? As of course, the courses are shorter than the formal ones, and normally they are, of course, less. they cost you less in terms of money and time. You can personalize your learning pathways on the basis of your needs once these modules of learning are standalone, and you can facilitate your networking and career opportunities as the courses are developed in collaboration with the labor market representatives. This is another element. I'm putting a lot of elements step by step, as these are all interesting things to explore and to identify also in the definition of the micro-credentials. Why they are useful for higher education institutions. We heard something this morning. A lot of other possible benefits are included for the higher education institutions. Of course, the higher education institution can diversify the offerings, can be open to new learners, new range of possible attendees of the courses. They meet the industry demands, the micro-credentials. And from this sense, the relationship with the industry is strategic for the higher education institutions in terms of reliability in the market, in terms of possible future collaboration, and so on. Of course, agility and flexibility in the implementation of the plans. They can be easily modified on the basis of the new demands of the labor market. They can be easily adjusted on the basis of the assessments, and so on. The revenue generation, of course, is another important aspects of the micro-credentials. Lifelong learning opportunities, enhanced institutional branding, as a collaboration with industries gives more visibility also to the higher education institutions. From the other side, it's very useful when we speak about micro-credentials also for employers. Why? The employers need some employees with the clear abilities. And so once they define these abilities in terms of learning outcomes, they have the perfect staff in their industries, in their working places, as they ask on the basis of their demands. Of course, the training programs are customized on the basis of the specific needs. This is another good element. And the credentials are recognized once they are defined by higher education institutions. And the expertise in the higher education institutions is also useful for further research and cooperation activities in order to further implement the industrial interest of the labor representatives. Of course, there is also the motivation of the employed force once is designated to learn more. they feel, of course, much more linked to their labor place, and they are they can work much more easily once they are trained on the basis of the needs. The collaborations between academia and industry is another important element. Finally, if we speak about the policies, we need to speak about the interest for the national governments. As of course, we are speaking about national governments. From the national governments, the main interests are to have enhanced workforce skills, more employability, supporting innovation and internship, promotion of lifelong learning, and strengthening of the higher education system. So policy, labor, innovation, research, you heard a lot of keywords, but it isn't a new concept as such. Probably you heard about this kind of courses before, a lot of years before the pandemic, when the moving around the micro-credentials became so active. In what we would learn at European level is that many countries, once we try to define the micro-credentials, many countries already had something similar. I could say similar, maybe not as defined now, or simply it was not forbidden to implement courses like this. The new shift to micro-credentials is only strictly related to the view of the learner. So the learner is at the center as holder of the certification, as a beneficiary of learning outcomes, and as a holder of something that is useful for the labor market. At European Union level, as I said several times, we started with a lot of programming documents, the European Skill Agenda, the Digital Education Plan, the European approach to micro-credentials, the European Education Area. From 2020 to 2021, the main documents in the field of education or labor were addressed the need to foster the micro-credentials. As you can easily understand, it was just in the middle, close to the end of the pandemic, but of course, all of us, we were forced during that time to change and to reskill our abilities in our work. Furthermore, in 2022, we had the mentioning of the need to foster, to develop the micro-credentials in the European strategy for universities. And finally, we arrived in June 2022 to the Council recommendation on micro-credentials. It was based on a previous document, the European approach to micro-credentials. It was published in 2020, but finally in 2022, we have a common framework based on a Council recommendation. The objectives of this Council recommendation are many, and they are addressed to all the beneficiaries of the micro-credentials. And we have to say that in this document, member states of the European Union are strongly recommended to put in practice some instruments from the legal point of view in order to implement the micro-credentials as defined in the Council recommendation. So finally, looking at the definition, we define in the Council recommendation 2022, the micro-credentials as a record of learning outcomes that a learner acquired followed a small volume of learning. And this is something that you already heard before. These learning outcomes will have to be assessed against transparent and clearly defined criteria. Learning experience leading to micro-credentials are designed to provide the learner with specific knowledge, skills, and competencies that responds to several actual needs. Micro-credentials are owned by the learner, maybe standalone or combined into larger credentials, and they are underpinned by quality assurance following agreed standards. So many elements in just one definition can give you an overview of all the relevant keywords you have to take into account once you want to develop a micro-credential. A lot of standard elements in Annex 1 of the Council recommendation are included as compulsory in the certification of a micro-credentials responded to the quality standards defined at European Union level. I don't go through the list, but as you can see, the older and the learning outcomes and the qualitative standards behind the micro-credentials course are the core of the certifications in order to facilitate its recognition of course. And once the certification responds to the defined standards, the final aim of this is to be easily understood from each employer, from each higher education institutions for further studies, from each interested party in order to understand what's behind the micro-credentials, as the aim is just to show knowledge and abilities strictly related to the needs. In the higher education, in the European higher education area, so we are no more speaking about the 27 members of the European Union, but Europe as a region. We also heard about the micro-credentials in the Rome Ministerial Communiqué 2020. And as I said before, we explored, and by a group of experts in the field of quality assurance, recognitions, qualifications. So many national authorities were involved in the demanding job to define how the main Bologna key commitments could be translated in the micro-credentials. So several documents were developed. The main one is the common framework. And this publication was very relevant in order to define the contents of the Council recommendation. So the European Union and the European higher education area worked in synergy in order to define a common shared framework. So also in this case, the main pillars defined where that the learner has to be at the heart, is the learner at the heart of micro-credentials, catalogs, certificates, links between education and research, and so on. Many pillars were, and now, in this moment, the three main peer groups of the Bologna follow-up group are working together in order to develop a joint document. The three peer groups are focused on quality assurance, recognitions, and qualifications framework. So in the next few months, yesterday I could say a few days, but I just to be sure, I say a few months, we will have a new document about micro-credentials developed by the Bologna follow-up group. And from the global perspective, finally, we have a very important document developed and published in at the beginning of 2022. And it's named, from UNESCO, it's named Towards a Common Definition of Micro-Credentials. The titles had to be adjusted on the basis of the contents, as also in this case, we have experts in the field of qualifications, quality assurance, recognition, so on, but all over the world. And also the Malaysian Qualifications Agency was involved in these great activities to find at policy level an agreement on micro-credentials, on a definition, on the further steps to implement them. But you can imagine at global level, So we faced a lot of difficulties in the European Union, in 27 countries, but also when we explored what's happening in Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Philippines, all your national systems, they have their own rules. And of course, they can't be simply translated in another country. And everybody has its own, every national system has its own needs. So we can cooperate as we do in the European Union. Every national authority has the full power, but the aim is not to change or to translate or to renounce on something from the national point of view. It's to cooperate. In this case, the cooperation was great, but finally they couldn't find an agreement, a complete agreement on the definitions, as too many voices were against some elements, so on. And the document, I invite you to read it, as it's very interesting, as it speaks about the process towards a common definition of micro-credentials. So finally, they agreed on some main elements. They couldn't on the others. So we can, of course, use this as something that could be, we could say it's recognized at global level, but we need to further, of course, enrich this definition with other elements, as you heard before. So from UNESCO, we can say that it's a record, that the micro-credentials is a record of learning, achievement, includes assessment as a standalone value. Before, do you remember when we spoke about the definition at European Union level? It could have a standalone, or it could be included in a full credential. And the other main element, agreed element, is the quality assurance. So this is the focus on which UNESCO found an agreement. Another important document on this by UNESCO is Beyond the Limit, New Ways to Reinvent Higher Education. And it's a programming document about the higher education in 2030. And the micro-credentials are seen as a crucial tool in order to go forward in the modernization and in the future views of the higher education institutions. Thank you very much. And please don't forget the afternoon session to further discuss about everything. Thank you.